Have you ever felt the burden of constantly wondering what people think of you? Why they left, why they changed, why they treat you the way they do? Islam teaches us a powerful truth. You are not responsible for how others behave. You are only responsible for how you respond, and ultimately how you stand before Allah. The Qur'an beautifully reminds us, no soul shall bear the burden of another. Surah Al-An'am 6 verse 4. Yet we live our lives weighed down by the expectations, judgments and opinions of others, forgetting that the only opinion that truly matters is that of our Creator. When you give people the power to define your worth, your peace becomes dependent on something you can never control. And that's a recipe for heartbreak. How someone sees you, speaks about you or treats you does not define you. What defines you is how sincerely you turn back to Allah in every situation. The world may misjudge you, but your Lord knows your heart. He sees your tears in the silence of the night, your efforts when no one else appreciates them, and your patience when you could have reacted with anger. When the Prophet Muhammad began his mission, he was called names, rejected by his own tribe, and labeled a liar by people who once loved him. Yet, he didn't chase their approval. He focused on his duty to Allah, and in doing so, became the most honored human being to ever walk the earth. He didn't allow the insults to alter his path, because his eyes were fixed on a greater destination, Jannah. Many of us suffer not because people hurt us, but because we hold on to their words long after they've forgotten them. We replay their betrayal, their silence, their harshness, and we ask, why? But the real question we need to ask is, what is Allah teaching me through this? Every pain is a reminder to shift our focus back to Him, to remember that He is Al-Wakil, the one who takes care of our affairs when we can. In the early days of Islam, a man once came to the Prophet and spat in his direction, trying to humiliate him in public. The Prophet turned away without a word. His silence was not weakness, it was strength. He understood that responding to ignorance with more ignorance would only lower him. And when you know your worth in the sight of Allah, you don't need to prove it to anyone else. You walk away, not because they don't matter, but because your peace does. Focusing on yourself doesn't mean being selfish, it means being mindful of your soul. It means purifying your heart, fixing your prayer, seeking knowledge, and striving to please Allah regardless of what others say or do. People may misunderstand you, but Allah understands every silent dawah you make. People may walk away, but He remains. And what greater comfort is there than knowing the Most Merciful is still holding your heart? The Prophet endured loss after loss. He lost his parents, his wife, Khadija al-Dali'ah, his beloved uncle Abi Talib, all in the span of a short time. But instead of falling apart, he rose in reliance on Allah. He taught us that healing is not found in people staying, but in Allah remaining. When your connection with Allah becomes strong, the absence of people no longer breaks you. So if you're tired, if you're broken, if you're wondering why they left or why they changed, just pause, breathe, and remember who never leaves. Remember who hears your thoughts when no one else does. You are not defined by their approval. You are defined by your sincerity before Allah. Focus on your relationship with Him and let everything else fall into place. What's written for you will never miss you, and what misses you was never meant for you. Trust His plan, even when you don't understand it, because peace isn't found in people. Peace is found in knowing that Allah is enough. What if the very thing you're holding on to is what's holding you back from peace? We often confuse letting go with giving up. We think that if we walk away, we are weak. If we stay silent, we've lost. But in the eyes of Allah, sometimes the strongest move you can make is to walk away. Not in anger, not in bitterness, but in surrender. Because real strength is knowing when a situation, a person, or a relationship is no longer helping your soul grow. It takes courage to step back, trust in Allah's plan, and say, I choose peace. Letting go is not about pride, it's about clarity. It's about knowing that Allah sees the effort you've made, the pain you've endured, and the patience you've practiced. And when that effort is no longer drawing you closer to Him, you release it, not out of resentment, but out of wisdom. The Qur'an reminds us, perhaps you dislike something and it is good for you, and perhaps you love something and it is bad for you. Allah knows and you do not know. Surah Al-Baqarah 221:6. What you think you need might be the very thing distracting you from what your heart truly craves. Connection with your Creator. When the people of Ta'if rejected the Prophet, they didn't just refuse his message, they humiliated him, mocked him, and drove him out with stones. And yet he didn't stay and beg for their approval. He turned to Allah in the most heartfelt dua, not asking for revenge, but asking if he still had Allah's pleasure. That was his strength. He let go of them, but never let go of hope. He showed us that sometimes walking away with dignity brings more honor than staying where you are not valued. We tend to hold on to people or situations because we fear the emptiness that might follow. But Allah fills every space that we surrender to Him. When you let go of what was never written for you, your hands become free to receive what is. That's not weakness. That's tawakkul. Trusting that what Allah takes away, He replaces with better in this life or the next. Strength is not shown in forcing things to work, but in accepting what no longer brings you closer to Jannah. There was a moment when the Prophet was deeply hurt by the betrayal of some of his closest companions in the Battle of Uhud. He didn't retaliate with hate or seek to shame them. He moved forward with wisdom, continued his mission, and left the matter to Allah. He taught us that emotional maturity is not about who wins the argument. It's about who stays connected to Allah through the pain. When you trust Allah enough to let go, you create space in your life for His mercy, His guidance, and His healing. Many people carry the emotional weight of unfinished conversations, unspoken apologies, and relationships that drain them of peace. But peace is not found in closure from others. It is found in surrender to Allah's decree. When you say, Hasbi Allah wa ni'mal wakil, Allah is sufficient for me and the best disposer of affairs, you are not giving up. You are giving it to the one who knows how to handle hearts far better than you ever could. The Prophet forgave countless people who wronged him, not because he approved of their actions, but because he chose his own inner peace over holding on to anger. He was insulted, rejected, and attacked, yet his heart remained clean. That is strength. Not shouting, not proving your worth, but walking away with your dignity and handing your pain to Allah. So if you're holding on to someone who no longer brings you closer to Allah, if you're clinging to a place where you are constantly hurt, overlooked, or misunderstood, know that your value does not decrease in their absence. You are still seen, still heard, still loved by the one who fashioned your soul. And when you finally let go, not out of hate, but out of hope, you will taste a peace this world cannot offer. Letting go is a mercy. Sometimes Allah removes people from your life to protect your heart. Sometimes He ends things to begin something better. And sometimes He asks you to trust Him without answers. Because the unseen is where His wisdom lives. Don't be afraid to release what weighs you down. You were not created to carry pain forever. You were created to know Allah, to love Him, and to return to Him with a heart that is clean, not crushed. You are not weak for walking away. You are brave for choosing Allah over chaos. And when you let go for His sake, He will never let you fall. What kind of environment is your soul growing in right now? Just like a plant withers in the wrong soil or without light, your heart and faith can begin to fade when surrounded by constant negativity, gossip, and people who pull you away from Allah. Islam teaches us to guard our surroundings carefully because the company we keep directly impacts our spiritual health. The Qur'an says, O you who have believed, fear Allah and be with those who are truthful. Surah At-Tabak 9:11. Who you let near your heart matters because their words, actions, and energy slowly shape your own. When you constantly allow yourself to be surrounded by those who mock your beliefs, criticize your efforts to grow, or remind you of your past mistakes, you begin to question your own worth. But Allah never measures you by where you were. He looks at where you're going. Your journey is personal, it's sacred, and not everyone deserves access to it. You are not obligated to stay in a space that suffocates your growth just because of history or emotional ties. You are allowed to choose peace. You are allowed to protect your light. The Prophet Muhammad chose his companions carefully. He surrounded himself with people who reminded him of Allah, who encouraged righteousness, who stood by him in hardship. When he invited the people of Makkah to Islam and they rejected him, insulted him, and laughed at his message, he didn't force himself to stay in that space. He turned to those whose hearts were open, those who wanted truth, not just comfort. His hijrah to Medina wasn't just a migration, it was a statement. Protect your mission, protect your peace. We sometimes cling to friendships and relationships out of guilt or fear, but growth often requires space. When people repeatedly lead you to sin, distract you from your salah, or plant doubt in your heart, you have to ask yourself, Are they helping me get closer to Jannah or pulling me away from it? The Prophet said, a person is upon the religion of his close friend, so let one of you look at whom he befriends. Tirmidhi. This advice is not to isolate you. It's to protect the most valuable thing you own, your faith. There were moments in the Prophet's life when he was betrayed even by those who claimed to support him. At the Battle of Uhud, some companions abandoned their positions, leading to painful losses. Yet he didn't hold on to bitterness. He adjusted, learned, and continued forward, surrounding himself with those who remained steadfast. This is the Sunnah, not clinging to what harms us, but choosing what uplifts and strengthens us. You don't need to explain yourself when you start prioritizing your peace. You don't need permission to walk away from toxic patterns, whether they come from people, places, or even habits. Allah sees your sincerity. He sees the silent battles you fight when you choose His path over comfort, and He never wastes your sacrifices. Every time you say no to a distraction, you say yes to His mercy. Every time you distance yourself from harm, you take a step closer to His light. The Prophet would often withdraw to the cave of Hira in solitude before his revelation. He needed that time away from the noise, away from the falsehood that surrounded him. And in that quiet space, Allah gave him the greatest gift, the Qur'an. Your best growth might come when you learn to disconnect from what dims your soul and reconnect with what nourishes it. His words, His remembrance. So ask yourself gently and honestly, is this environment helping me become who Allah created me to be? If not, then protect your space, guard your peace, prioritize your relationship with the one who never leaves, never betrays, and always responds. When you focus on your own growth, when you water your own roots, you will flourish, regardless of who stays or who leaves. And when your heart belongs to Allah, He will send you people, places, and peace that are truly meant for you. What if your heart keeps breaking because you're still chasing what Allah wants you to leave behind? How many times do we hold on to people, memories, or situations simply because they once brought us comfort, even when they no longer bring us peace? Islam teaches us that when we truly place our trust in Allah, we understand that whatever leaves us was never meant for us. The pain only lingers when we tie our hearts to what is temporary, forgetting that true contentment comes from trusting the one who never leaves. The Qur'an reminds us, and whoever relies upon Allah, then He is sufficient for him. Surah Talaq 65:3. But do we really believe that He is enough? Letting go doesn't mean that you failed. It means that Allah in His wisdom is redirecting you. The doors that close, the people who walk away, the friendships that fade, none of these are accidents. Each one is part of a divine plan, written with knowledge far beyond what we can see. And sometimes Allah removes what you thought you needed, so He can give you what your soul truly craves. You were not created to be emotionally dependent on creation. You were created to rely fully on your Creator. There was a moment in the life of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ that speaks deeply to this. When his beloved uncle Abu Talib passed away, the pain was immense. Abu Talib had protected him, supported him, stood by him in times when almost everyone else walked away. Yet, despite that love and loyalty, Abu Talib died without accepting Islam. The Prophet Muhammad grieved not just the loss of a loved one, but the loss of an opportunity to see him saved. And still, Allah reminded him, "Indeed, O Muhammad, you do not guide whom you like, but Allah guides whom He wills." Surah Al-Qasas 28:56. This was a powerful reminder that even the most sincere love cannot control destiny. Sometimes we must let go, not because we didn't love enough, but because guidance, loyalty, and change come only from Allah. Many times we invest our hearts into people who were only meant to be temporary companions on our journey. When they leave or change, we think we've lost a part of ourselves. But hearts were never designed to belong to anyone but Allah. When you focus too much on someone else's role in your life, you risk neglecting your own soul's path. And no one, no matter how close, deserves that kind of power over your peace. During the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, the Muslims agreed to terms that seemed extremely unfair. One of the most painful clauses was that any Muslim who fled from Makkah to Medina without permission would be returned. The Prophet agreed, trusting in Allah's wisdom, even as one of those Muslims, Abu Jandal, was dragged away in chains right before his eyes. The Prophet could not intervene and the pain was clear on his face, but he placed his trust in Allah's plan, not his emotions. And later that same treaty opened the way for the greatest victory, Fath Makkah. What seems like a loss in the moment may be a setup for a greater victory you cannot yet see. We all have moments when we wonder, why is Allah taking this away from me? But the better question is, what is Allah trying to give me through this? Trusting Allah means believing that every removal is a form of protection, every delay is a form of preparation, and every hardship is a step closer to something better. You might be praying for something to stay while Allah, in His mercy, is trying to pull you away from harm you cannot yet comprehend. When the Prophet lost his wife Khadija al-Radhiyallahu, he lost not just a spouse, but his greatest emotional support. That grief was real and it was heavy. Yet even in his sorrow he remained focused on his mission. He turned to Allah and through that loss found new strength. Allah did not replace her, but He brought others into his life who would support him in different ways. Loss never left him broken, it only pushed him to rely more on Allah. So if you're facing a moment of release, where someone you love has drifted away, or a chapter of your life has ended, do not despair. What is meant for you will never miss you, and what misses you was never written for you. Trust that Allah sees the full picture, while you only see one frame. He is the one who holds your heart, your future and your healing. Let go of what keeps you stuck, and walk with faith toward what He has written for you, because whatever you lose for His sake, He promises to replace with something far greater. Have you ever wondered why your heart feels so heavy even when you're trying your best? Sometimes the weight we carry is not from hardship itself, but from holding on to people, expectations, and pain that Allah is asking us to release. We tie our joy to others, expecting them to fill spaces in our hearts that were only meant for the remembrance of Allah. But the soul can never be at peace if it's constantly dependent on something or someone that was never meant to be permanent. The Qur'an reminds us, and rely upon the ever-living, who does not die. Surah Al-Furqan 25:58. When we trust people more than we trust our Creator, we begin to fear their absence more than we fear losing our connection with Allah. The reality is, not everyone in your life is meant to stay forever. Some people are tests, some are lessons, and some are blessings that fade with time. But none of them are worth losing your inner peace for. We often delay our healing because we're waiting for closure, for an apology, for validation, from people who may never give it. But Islam teaches us that peace does not come from people, it comes from submission to the decree of Allah. You let them go not because you're heartless, but because you love Allah enough to move on and grow closer to Him. The Prophet Muhammad experienced deep loss throughout his life. He buried many loved ones, his wife Khadija, his uncle Hamza, his sons and daughters. He felt the pain, he wept, but he did not allow grief to paralyze his mission or detach him from Allah. Even at the burial of his son Ibrahim, tears filled his blessed eyes, and yet he said, "The eyes shed tears and the heart feels sorrow, but we do not say anything except what pleases our Lord." This is the kind of strength we are called to embody, to feel without drowning, to grieve without despairing, to let go while holding firmly to Allah. Some of the most beautiful transformations in life happen after we release what we once begged to keep. Your growth often starts at the moment you stop chasing things not meant for you. That's not a loss, it's a spiritual awakening, and it requires trust. Trust that Allah removes with purpose. Trust that even silence is an answer and distance is a mercy. When Allah removes someone from your life, He's not punishing you. He's protecting you from what your heart cannot see. After the loss of Khadija and Abu Talib, the Prophet entered a period known as the Year of Sorrow. It was perhaps one of the most difficult times of his life. But from that pain came a new journey, the Hijrah to Medina. And in Medina, Allah gave him a new community, safety, victory, and the freedom to establish Islam. The lesson? Sometimes what feels like an ending is actually the beginning of something far better, but only if you trust Allah enough to take the next step. We often ask Allah to help us grow, to bring us peace, to guide us to the right path, but when He starts removing distractions or people that were never meant to stay, we resist. Yet the very act of letting go might be the answer to the dua you once whispered in sujud. Allah never wastes a tear. He never allows pain to come without purpose. What you're letting go of today might be the very thing standing between you and the next level of your iman. So if your heart is struggling to move on, if you're afraid of what the future looks like without someone who once meant so much to you, Turn that fear into dua. Turn your pain into sa'dah. And remind yourself, indeed, with hardship comes ease. Surah Ash-Shar 94:6. You are not alone. You are being guided. You are being prepared. And when you finally let go, for the sake of your Lord, you will find that He was enough all along.